Good afternoon, everyone, to all those who have joined this particular forum. This is the third edition of the South Story that we're releasing today with TAM and Media News for You, joining hands together. It's been a crazy year for all of us, the last 1 year, where we have seen the pandemic taking an effect on most of the businesses, including a bit of advertising during the course of the year. But in spite of that, this Southside book story has been released primarily because of the fact that there's a set of data COVID warriors, whom I call us, the ones who have actually done data collation, data analytics, data coding, as well as data release or dissemination to ensure the fact that the data reaches the user side in real quick time so that decision making can actually happen continuously. So without their effort, this booklet couldn't have seen the light at all. And therefore, as we begin the release of this particular booklet, it's important the fact that we give a salute to all those data COVID warriors. And that's there from both the sides. It's in the TAM side as well as in the Media News for You side. So thank you to all of them. And we look forward to many such releases in the future too. The story of 2020 won't be complete without some of the anecdotes that we have captured in this particular booklet. And from that, I picked up some of the few snapshots that the data talks about to relate to the story that 2021 could actually present. So this presentation is largely about how we have recovered from the pandemic effect in terms of advertising in the southern 4 states. Apart from that, a bit of a scenario of advertising, just doing benchmarking with all India, and what to expect in 2021 and beyond. If you look to the 2019 versus 2020, you could see the slowdown on advertising because of the pandemic effect. Overall, as in advertising, the revenue dropped from a 70,000 crore projected spend using industry data as well as the TAM data, TAM data, to around 55,000 in the year 2020. That's a degrowth of around 21%. If you look at the individual mediums that have played a role in terms of the growth or degrowth of the actual spends, we see television with dropping from 27,000 crores of estimated spends to around 23,000 crores, which means a decline of around 15%. But interestingly, what we see also is that the 15% decline has taken television to a larger share of the pie, with almost 42% share of the total advertising spends, compared to a 39% in 2019. Print, if you look at it, has also similarly declined, but almost double that of television by almost 35%. And similarly, we see radio too, the decline of around 40%. While print and radio are catching up slowly, we see outdoor and cinema languishing pretty poorly, with almost 80% decline, completely a whitewash year for 2020 for those two mediums. The interesting element is digital in this entire gamut of media plays. Not only they have grown by 10%, but the gap that they had of almost 18 percentage points between digital and television has got closed to around 12 percentage points. So slowly digital is catching up with television in the total share of spend pie. If you look at the same data from a southern perspective, which is the 5 markets, AP, Tamilnadu, Kerala, Karnataka, and Telangana put together, we see television similarly declining by 18%. Overall advertising spends have declined from 21,500 to 16,700, a decline of almost around 22%. But there are some interesting caveats coming out over here. One is television declining by around 18%, but share of television almost touching 50%. So they are becoming a dominant player in the advertising space, even in a shrinking market. Radio, cinema, and outdoor have more or less been, the fall has been similar to what we see on the national medium. Although radio decline in national medium was around 40%, in South, it's just around 25%. So overall, they held the share from a 4% share earlier to a 4% share even today. Print has been more or less like national, with almost around 38% drop in spends and shares declining to 23%. But the interesting element is digital. Nationally, digital dropped by 10%, increased by 10%. Okay. In South, digital grew by 20%. So that's been a fantastic growth, whereby their share of spend has increased from a 13% to a 21% in the overall share of spends. But yet, there's a huge gap between television and digital in the southern market compared to what we're seeing in the national level, where the gap is actually reducing. If you look at the share of spends between national and southern region, you'll see this even more graphically identified, with television becoming stronger on digital, stronger in southern market, with from 42% share in the national level to a 50% share in the southern market. While digital having a 30% share in the national market is around 21% share in the southern market. Radio is more or less similar, and print also with a similar share of market. So the gameplay is happening between television and digital constantly at a national and a southern market level. If you break the southern market spends by individual markets and compare it against the mediums, this is the pie that you get on the right-hand side. Tamilnadu accounts for 30% of the television spends, or the overall spends, with 5,000 crores, but they have declined over 2019 by 21%. Telangana and AP put together are with a 28% share of the market, with a decline of around 20%, and Karnataka with 4,000 crores and a 24% share of the pie, with a decline of 20% over 2019. The interesting element is Kerala, which has actually got affected the worst with the pandemic, has had the worst fall in terms of total ad spends revenues too. The decline is around 29%, the highest among the five markets, and their share of pie is around 18% with 3,000 crores. So relatively speaking, the national degrowth has been at minus 21%, southern markets at minus 22%, while Kerala market is at a minus 29%. So the highest degrowth you literally see is in Kerala in nature. Now, while that story is changing as we enter into 2021, there are exceptional changes that have happened towards the Q4 of 2020 itself. The growth in some other traditional mediums, specifically television, and a certain amount in print and television, print and radio too. So if you look at the southern market closely and look at the pre-lockdown, lockdown, and unlock phase, which is post-lockdown phase, for television, you see the ad volumes on unlock phase higher than the pre-lockdown phase. So around 327 hours of advertising volume that happens per day has jumped up to around 369 hours of advertising volume per day. So that means the fact that, for a 45% degrowth that happened during the lockdown phase, there's been a 2x growth between lockdown and unlock phase on television. And what we see is a huge growth of almost 38% between lockdown phase and unlock phase in the categories that have come into advertising. There's 3x growth in terms of advertisers and brands in the unlock phase on television. So you see the stimulus that is driving this particular growth on television. When you look at print as a next medium, the print is yet catching up, unlike television. I could say it's an index of around 90 between a unlock phase and a pre-lockdown phase. For an 81% drop, they had a 5x growth in the unlock phase, driven again by categories by 1.7x and by advertisers and brands, where the number of brands and advertisers have jumped up by 5x in the unlock phase. Radio, like print, is still catching up in the southern market, although in terms of revenues and shares, they have done pretty well. In terms of hours of advertising, it's at an index of around 80. Okay. But they have grown at 5x times post the lockdown, again driven by categories and number of brands and advertisers growing by almost 6x times. When you compare that to a national level, where television volumes largely have recovered with a 90% level as we ended the year 2020, we see also advertisers and brands growing by almost 2x level. Print, the volumes have grown up by around 5x level, and the radio has also jumped up by almost 5x level, up by the number of brands and advertisers who are combined to these particular mediums. So overall, it's looking like a rosy picture as we enter into the new financial year of 2021. If you look at some of the snapshots, key snapshots of what is actually happening in the advertising scenario of the southern market, okay. South almost contributes to 1/4 of the total advertising volumes at a national level. Okay. And when we look at TV, print, and radio as each of them singularly in nature, television is almost at a 30% contribution level, it's declined from a 34% in 2019. So the effect of the pandemic has brought down the contribution in southern market for television marginally lower. Print and radio also have fallen down, but print not to that significant level, radio by around 3 percentage points. If you look at the number of categories, brands and advertisers in the southern market vis-a-vis overall all in level basis, 1/3 of advertisers in the national level advertise in the southern market, which means the fact that there are 2/3 of advertisers who still have to have their presence in television in medium platforms in the southern market. If you look at brands, there are 68,000 brands that are advertising in the southern market compared to almost around 2 lakh brands that goes at a national level. But on a category level, almost 80% of the categories that are advertising at a national level are present in the southern market too. If you look at the trend between 2016 to 2020, the growth in TV ad volumes between all India and the southern market is more or less similar. So when I look at year-to-year basis between 2016 and 2020, not so different at all in terms of overall growth, which means the fact that we have touched the levels in 2020 of volumes which we had already seen in 2016 on television. In print, there's a contraction that has actually happened at all India level, which is minus 40%, and similar to that in South, which you saw earlier too. And in radio too, we see a volume dip, substantial volume dip in all India level as well as in the southern markets in nature. If you break that down by individual states of South, television, print, and radio, you see television in AP and Telangana surging forward with 29% growth. Karnataka, again, the television has grown by around 35%. Kerala by around 46%, and by Tamilnadu around 16% between 2016 to 2020. Vis-a-vis print and radio, you see in all the 4 markets dropping down substantially in terms of volumes. On television, the popular genres continue to be largely general entertainment content, except in AP and Telangana, where news has taken away a larger proportion of the volume of advertising. And that's surely because of the fact that there are more number of news channels available in the AP market and Telangana market, therefore increasing the amount of airtime available for advertising on news channels. If you look at the top drivers for South in terms of advertising in TV, print, and radio, the top 10 sectors contribute to almost 80% of the total volumes. And these common sectors across the 3 platforms, traditional media remains, which are largely services, personal accessories, auto, and F&B. So if these categories bouncing back in the post-COVID economy, okay, obviously the advertising is also showing up in an upward trend manner. Some of the sectors which are rocking in the three segments or the three media platforms. On television, the top 10 advertisers were from FMCG sector. In print, 5 of the top 10 advertisers are from the auto sector, while in radio, top 10 advertisers are a mix of auto, services, and BFSI sector. So therefore, if you ever go down to a second lockdown, and if you want to see what kind of categories may automatically come up in terms of advertising, this list will actually help radio stations, broadcasters, as well as print guys to go and attack it for saving their ad volumes. In terms of advertising propensity, we see the common advertisers across the 3 medium almost up to around 590 odd of them, or 600 odd advertisers. So these 600 advertisers traverses across cross-media platform to reach out to end customers on a continuous basis. And again, when you look at these advertisers, they largely come from the sectors that we just saw in the earlier slide: FMCG, auto, retail, BFSI, financial sectors, etc. There are exclusive advertisers too. There are almost close to 4 times the number of television exclusive advertisers than the common advertisers, besides the common advertisers. On print, there are around 46,000 common new advertisers or exclusive advertisers, which is much higher than television and radio. And digital being around 1,400 of them too. But the landscape is changing slowly, where the first entrance to new advertisers are actually digital more than print in some of the markets. We'll see that later on in the coming slide. The impact of pandemic has also been on festival advertising. Festival theme advertising has dropped in South by almost 29%. And the same thing happened on a cross-country level too. Almost 27% drop in festival advertising in on India level. When we look at key themes in which promotions happened and advertising surged forward, we're largely doing Deepavali and Christmas. Deepavali in AP, Tamilnadu, Karnataka, and Christmas in the state of Kerala. When you look at sectors that really focus on festive advertising, you see durable sector in a massive way, along with auto and retail playing a significant role in growing the ad pie during the festive time. This year, we bring in a small snapshot of also data from our TAM Sports division, which is focusing on the 3 franchisees that lends itself to the IPL every year. Now, in IPL 13, when we look at the southern 3 franchises' contribution, the amount of advertising that happened on them and the exposure they got on screen, there are 216 hours of advertising that was actually associated across 8 franchisees in IPL 13, of which 40% of them was contributed by the 3 franchisees from South. If you look at the number of brands that are connected with the Southern IPL teams, around 44 of them, and there were 15 branding platforms on which the brand utilized to get visibility on these franchisee teams. When we further go down to in-stadium advertising during the IPL, brands associated with them, you see Sunrisers Hyderabad consuming the maximum in terms of 15 brands and 14 brand units, contribute to almost 31 hours of exposures, followed by Royal Challengers, which are the largest number of brands and a less amount of branding units than Sunrisers Hyderabad, 20 brands with 13 branding units, contributing to around 28 hours of exposure for those brands. Chennai Super Kings, they had 14 brands with 13 branding platforms, contributing to 25 hours of exposures for those brands. There are more data available on these things in the South Story booklet, which probably could be a good insight into how sports is taking over as one of the primary platforms for communication over the 3 traditional mediums, and using television and streaming platforms to do that communication effectively to audiences. Also, there is a small section of the digital story that we implanted in the snapshot. The more details of it you'll find in the South Story South Story booklet. If you look at a quick snapshot of it, there are 180 plus southern web publishers on which advertising is actually happening. There are more publishers where there are no advertising happening, but advertising related, 180 of them actually, that we track out of around 3,500 odd web publishers that we track on a continuous basis. There are 480 plus categories that are advertising in these platforms. And there are 70,800 plus advertisers already in these platforms. And this is where I see, the more brands that are walking into digital, some of them are first-time advertisers itself. So earlier, print used to be a source of information for the new advertisers coming on, specifically on the retail side. That will continue to be, but slowly digital is coming in and powering its way into bringing in new advertisers, which will then translate into for other platform owners to move in and capture them. If you look at number of brands, there are 21,000 plus brands that are there in the southern publications advertising. And as I said, there are 930 plus exclusive advertisers only on the digital platform of Southern India who are not on other traditional media platforms at all. So this is one of the key elements of how of what we're going to see in the future, where these exclusive advertisers, will they be spreading arms into the other platforms or other media, or will they remain exclusive? And when more and more advertisers from other platforms shift only to digital as a platform. If you look at the top 10 sectors here, which is largely led by services, computers, education, etc. Real estate took a little beating this year, unlike in 2019, where we see them among the top 3 also. 89% of this advertising came from the top 10 sectors. And 65% of the digital ad insertions coming from top 3 of them. So in other words, services, computers, and education almost literally took away 2/3 of the total advertising that happened in the digital platform in the southern publishers segment. If you look at, since we cover video, display, mobile, laptops, and desktops in terms of monitoring, if you look at a quick overplay of what's happening, video is growing, but it's still not the dominant form of communication happening in, specifically because more and more new entrants are coming into digital platform are first using display platform rather than actually using the video platform. Share of video has grown, but it's still at a 16%, while the display almost takes away around 85% of the advertising form. And desktops plus mobile, if one looks at it, it's almost taking away around 84% of the advertising, with the mobile display growing faster than the desktop display. So if you look at 2021 and put on some of the key trends that are likely to follow through from 2020 onwards, given the growth in 2020 Q4, we're going to likely to see a 20% plus growth rate in 2021. The magnitude of jump that has happened in the last quarter of 2020 is likely to flow through into 2021 too. And out of the 4 states or 5 states, there are 2 of them which are actually seeing an election going up, and automatically that's another feeder into the overall growth of advertising that's going to happen. Second is the mega sporting events and reality shows are becoming a big reach driver for many of the brands wanting to reach out to maximize their communication with audiences. So that, along with the regional stations in specific pockets of southern markets, contributing to audiences, the growth in revenues will be sustained. And our feeling is the fact that the southern television will continue to maintain the momentum going forward with a 50% share of the ad spend itself. The national and regional print players are now focusing on 2 fronts, either television plus their own digital web portal, or print plus their own digital web portal. And that is likely to get enhanced even further with competition coming in form of regional OTT players. So we see quite a lot of of OTT players coming in play with a combo offer of AVOD and SVOD with content driven from the movie industry, plus at the same time self-created content to augment more audiences into these platforms. Digital share of spend in 2021, while it will be continuing to be lower than television in the southern markets, the growth is likely to be continue to be in double digits as we move forward in 2021. Regional consumption will increase with advertisers' focus on hyperlocal and regional target audiences growing tremendously. Therefore, we expect advertising growth to be sustained with these kind of growth of advertising segment, as well as we're going to see an increased amount of new advertising entry into digital first as a platform rather than print that we used to see earlier. Okay. Print and radio may need to source these new clients and by offering them combo deals, which they're already doing presently in nature. So we see these are the key major trends for 2021. And our feeling is the fact that as we exit 2021, the entire media platform will be even on a stronger wicket than what it was as it headed into 2021 from 2020. You will find most of these analysis in a deeper form in the South Story booklet. So happy reading, and wish you all a great happy New Year in the coming New Year celebrations inside homes. Stay safe, stay healthy, and all wishes from all of us from TAM. Thank you.